Welcome back, everybody, to Ravenstar's Witching Hour. I am your host, Solaris BlueRaven. My brilliant guest tonight is David Sereda. And David, I'm so impressed with your data. You have no idea. And we have a question here in the chat. It was from Olive asking, have you read all of the Nag Hammadi?
Oh, yeah, see, the Nag Hammadi, yes, I've read everything. The Nag Hammadi is one collection of manuscripts that were discovered on papyrus and leather-bound books in 1945 by a young man named Muhammad Ali. And his mom actually burns a bunch of them in the fire, so we lost a lot of good stuff. And I'm really upset about that, but, you know, she didn't know what they were. And so some of the manuscripts I'm referring to here are from the Nag Hammadi library. Like the Gospel of Philip is in the Nag Hammadi collection, but the Acts of Philip are not in the Nag Hammadi collection. The Acts of John are not in the Nag Hammadi collection, but they're in, you know, a book called New Testament Apocrypha by Wilhelm Schleiermacher. And so there were many manuscripts that were found before Nag Hammadi, and there, of course, are the Dead Sea Scrolls as well. And once you've read all of them, and then you start to get your favorites, and you start to see this picture of a different view of God and levels of gods and goddesses, and you start to see the picture of the women, of course. I mean, most of the Nag Hammadi collection contains gospels that glorify Christ even further than the canonized four gospels do, but they also glorify the presence of the divine feminine in Christianity. And it's very clear to me that the early church fathers, you had a council at Nicaea, a council at Hippo in North Africa, a council at Trento, Italy, just before the formation of the Catholic Church. They were all male councils. There were no women sitting on those council boards. So any gospel that showed women in power, for example, like you take the Apostle Paul, who was formerly Saul, and he gets blinded in the vision on the road to Damascus, converts to Christianity because of his blinding, ecstatic vision of Christ. I received a blinding vision of Christ in 1994 when my tent was flooded with water in Topanga, California. And then he appeared to me many times, and so did Mary Magdalene, and so did the Mother Mary. And they taught me in person, which is what led me to the Gnostic Gospels. But the Gnostics, Gnosis just means knowledge, to have direct experience knowledge rather than just linear knowledge of reading and acquiring knowledge that way. So what I'm saying to the person with the question is, there are many other pieces of literature that are not inside of the Nag Hammadi library, so don't limit yourself to that. There is a complete archive of almost every gospel I'm mentioning here online that is available in every gospel in their entirety. There are also different interpretations of translation from the Greek and in some cases Hebrew. Like you can read, for example, if you read the Gospel of the Hebrews, which is not in the Nag Hammadi library, you will see Jesus refer to the Holy Spirit as his mother. So he's calling his mother the Holy Spirit, which is again feminine, right? And the church doesn't do that. They took that away. He refers to his mother also as the Holy of Holies in the Gospel of Philip. And then you read the Acts of Philip are not in the Nag Hammadi library, and that is one amazing piece of work. So you see here, I'm going to tell you something about an experience I just had, because I've been working with the staff that I've created with the gems. The gems are very important because Moses' staff had sapphires in it, according to the most ancient sources. And the throne of God was a sapphire throne. And so sapphires are immensely powerful. They're also good ones are immensely expensive, but you can get lab-grown ones that are very pure and very good. But the point is, I've been working with my staff for about 9 months, and I just took, my two little daughters and my wife. We went to a beach town in Canada called Tofino on Vancouver Island, and we're camping. And my 57th birthday was August 21st. And I had
Happy
these.
birthday.
Yeah, thank you. And I had these most profound dreams that were really, really visions. And the first dream was on my birthday. I met in the spirit the first humans. And when I say humans, I don't mean the Neanderthal Cro-Magnon theory. These were the first humans that came into being through the spirit of God, in the pre-existent spirit of God, and which is an enormous story in the Gnostic Gospels. And it's the equivalent of saying you're meeting the most perfect, originally created Adama and the Eve. And when I met them, they were so perfect in both mind and light and physically astounding to look at. And there were multiples of them. And I saw how they originally came and how the Creator originally made every single one of us absolutely perfect. It is through our minds and the lack of choices we made in the history of our souls that we slowly became imperfect. And that's a long, long story about how we decided to do that individually. And some people decided to really apply themselves to meditation, and spiritual practices are not just limited to sitting in a lotus posture or sitting in silence. I include dance, sound, music, even sensual sexuality with love is very good for Kundalini awakening, especially, of course, if it's really love-based. And I don't believe, from all the evidence I've seen in my own practice, I was 8 years celibate before I met my wife. And then when I met my wife, my meditation got better, not worse. And so we had 2 children. And I'm saying that when you read these Gnostic scriptures and you read some of these scriptures I'm talking about, you will see evidence that I don't know how it happened. I don't know how men did this to their beautiful women and consorts in life to demote them spiritually. And in Islam, too, I can honestly say, if you know the story of Muhammad and his wife Khadijah, without Khadijah, there would be no Muhammad. She made him what he was. She brought his brilliance and his illuminated self and God to the public and made him a figure. And without her, there would be no Islam today. And then when she died, because she was an older woman and there were a lot of wars, he took younger wives, and he believed that men needed to take care of women. So there were many, there were too many women because of the wars, and then therefore the men in those days would take multiple wives. And some people complain about that, but during periods of war, imagine how many women are just alone in their lives. So some Muslims have a completely different view of that, whereas in America they see it as something selfish and greedy. But in those days they had to do it because you had to take care of the women. And so he was all about taking care of the women. I don't know. I mean, I've read the Quran. I actually had an experience in Saudi Arabia on 9/11, and I met Muhammad standing right in front of me. And he is immensely powerful. It was difficult to look at him. His radiance was so powerful, it was difficult to look at him. But still, having met Christ in person, I can say that Christ is something completely different than Muhammad. He is something much more blinding than the Prophet Muhammad. Although Muhammad is immensely illuminated, it's not the same thing. So what Jesus is saying in the Gospel of Philip, and it's in secret, you have to really read this carefully, that there are 3 buildings of initiation. And the Holy of the Holies is where you acquire the resurrected self, but all 3 buildings are part of an initiation. And so it's a whole process. And I believe the frequencies of the staff and the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy of Holies go together. I believe on top of the Great Pyramid, there was a Holy of Holies. And this practice of attaining the resurrected self goes all the way back to the goddess Isis and Osiris. And now it gets really amazing because I've taken this Holy of Holies thing so deep. When I took the measurements, you're not going to believe what I did.
Mm-hmm.
I took NASA data on the radius of all the different stars in our constellations. And once I had the radius, I could calculate the circumference of the star at the equator. And then I used a mathematical octave using, and this is an enormous subject to find the perfect octave musically. And I octave the stars up in frequency, which means they come down in size. And to my astonishment, having covered all the stars of Pleiades, Orion's belt, Sirius A and B, Vega, Arcturus, the list goes on and on. When I octaved them down, there were 2 stars that fit perfectly inside of the Holy of Holies as an octave. And I went, oh my God. When I saw the first star, which was Sirius A, I said, oh my God, Isis and Osiris are from Sirius A. So the Holy of Holies is an octave it's a higher octave of Sirius A. So does that mean the Holy of Holies is the Stargate to Sirius A? And does that mean that Osiris and Isis were the products of the Holy of Holies too? And they probably were, because one existed on the top of the Great Pyramid. I found 2 other Holy of Holies with the correct measurement. The correct measurement means the correct frequency. And then, to my astonishment, in Chaco Canyon, New Mexico, what is New Mexico today, there are these circle temples, which are, the remains are still there today. I went in there with a laser with my kids and my wife, and I measured them precisely. And there's one sitting there in perfect, on a Leica laser, a perfect Holy of Holies. And there's no way they could have, we would say that First Nations people didn't know the inch, and they didn't know, they couldn't have known what a Holy of Holies was. And you have to understand, there's no possibility of chance when it's perfect to, a tenth of an inch accuracy. Like they're using a string and a pole to make this circle. So who the heck taught them to make a Holy of Holies? Well, we know from the dating of Chaco Canyon, New Mexico, that it was after the crucifixion of Christ that they were made. They were made about 800 to 1100 years ago, and Christ goes back 2,000 years. So I had to ask myself, how did they know, and why did they make a Holy of Holies? And they have a ritual. Now, you have to understand, the people of Chaco Canyon were the original Hopi Indians, and they were the original Pueblo peoples that became Anasazi, that became the Pueblo people that moved into other parts of Arizona. But Chaco Canyon is in New Mexico, and you can go there today. So I measured a whole bunch of circles in there with my laser. And you have to understand, when you octave a star, so you go up in musical octaves, which means you go down, your circle gets smaller and smaller. Most of the stars I calculated completely miss the temple dimensions. So the chances of one fitting perfectly to 99.7%, and that NASA's data on the radius of those stars is no better than that, then you have a perfect marriage. So that means it is very possible in Jesus's resurrected self and the many documentations of him appearing. I mean, he appeared all over the Americas. Many First Nations tribes can tell you they saw him. He showed them the wounds, and it was Jesus. And they some of them don't use the name Jesus, but it's something very similar. We know in Central America, in the Mayan culture, there are some people that equate Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, because he was, fair skin, had a long beard and a white robe, and some people equate him to Christ and the resurrected self. You also go to the story of Joseph Smith, and the Mormon Church and the foundations of the Mormon Church. And what he was shown is there were people here in the Americas far before Columbus that were sent over. So I'm asking myself, how did they know this measurement? How did the people of Chaco Canyon, who are the Hopi of today, know that measurement? Because they did a ceremony called the Laken, where I think it was 8 women, only women did this ceremony. And this is interesting too, because this is their Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies in Chaco Canyon would have had a cover on the top, a hole on the top, and a hole in the floor called the sipapu. And they would go and fast in there, and they were brought food and had their human waste removed, and they lived in the dark for the 8 days during the Laken festival. And that's actually my grandfather's name, Laken Sereda, which is a Ukrainian name. And anyway, they would have visions in there. But the point is, it's a Holy of Holies, and they're women, and they're going inside of it. And so, again, you come to the forward to today, where only men are allowed in the Holy of Holies. What do you mean? I have 3 stories of women going into the Holy of Holies, and we have a totally different people called First Nations, tribal people, who have their Holy of Holies with the perfect measurement. We have the perfect measurement of Mary Magdalene's Holy of Holies, and then we have Solomon's Temple 1 and 2 in Jerusalem, where apparently only males could go into, but we know the Virgin Mary went in there. So this is getting really and more exciting, and therefore it aligns to the star series. So I did more stars. I did more star octaves, and I've got all the math. It's pages of math, because when you're going up in frequency, your size scale goes down, and you're jumping in your octaves. And Vega, the star Vega, which was in the movie Contact with Jodie Foster, was an even more perfect fit. It's only Vega and Sirius A that the octaves fit perfectly inside of the Holy of Holies, with no leftover space. But Vega was better. But the problem is, I don't ultimately know, because NASA they'll show you their data, the astronomy data. Some stars, they'll say plus or minus 0.03 on the radius, and some of them, they know they got it dead on. And Vega, they have really good, accurate information on. But the point is, it's very clear to me where this all goes. Is our view of God, like when we see God, Goddess as a super illuminated being with immense powers greater than humans, that would be an accurate description. But to say a single being that created the whole universe could physically interact with a human would be impossible, because no human energetically could survive in the presence of the total energy of even our sun. It would blind them. The electricity of our sun would fry the human nervous system. There would be no way you could interact with it. So we ultimately don't know what God is, but is it possible that these temples are stargates? And now I can mathematically match any temple or crop circle. If we have a real crop circle and we've determined it's real, I can match it to a star octave.
Nice.
And I'm going to be able to do that for crop circles and temples all over the world. And that's my goal, is to see now what I can do, and stay in touch with davidsereda.net and holyresonance.com, because you can get your own staff, your own coil or wand to work with these frequencies of the Holy of Holies and get them in your body and help you in your meditation process to switch on your light body, your Ba and your Ka and your Ak, so that you become, you see, they didn't just meditate, is what I'm saying. The temple served a purpose. The fact that we don't have a Holy of Holies on the earth today is a great tragedy. And we are working with partners that we are going to build one right here in the Kootenays of British Columbia, and people will be able to come and experience meditation with it. It's a very large structure of stone. It's in the 35-foot square range, but that's not the measure, but it's very close to that. The exact measurement I have and the exact frequency I have. So I mentioned that this just happened. So I had this experience. I meet the first humans, the first original perfect humans, and we see Jesus speaking further in the Gospel of Philip, and he says later in Philip at the end that if Adam and Eve, who fell from grace by partaking of the knowledge of good and evil, which is internalizing duality, and because there ultimately is no good and evil, because human good is pathetic compared to God's good, and humans' evil is just subjective. Everybody argues about what's right and what's wrong, and no one can agree on anything. So the poison of the knowledge of good and evil is you're taking in a conflict, and you become a conflict, and therefore you create conflicts from your mind outwards. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, what Jesus says is that Adam and Eve, if they could partake of the Holy of Holies, they would become perfect again, like the original first perfect humans. And so he's saying it has the power for total redemption of sin. And say, when you say total redemption of sin, that's exactly what the Jews did. The high priest or priestess went into the Holy of Holies once a year to atone for the sins of the people for the whole year. One day, one redemption for everyone. And so Jesus comes and says, I am the embodiment of that. I can atone for your sins personally through the Holy of Holies because I was born of it. My mother was raised inside of it. Mm-hmm. And with that, I wanted to introduce you to my wife, Crystal, mm-hmm. and let her tell you, like, it's actually amazing the information she's getting on the other side. And are you ready, Crystal?
Sure.
To talk? Here's my wife, Crystal.
Excellent. Hello, Crystal.
Hi there.
This is the microphone right here.
Nice to meet you. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. What is your name?
I'm Solaris.
Solaris. Nice to meet you. So, yeah, I've had some pretty exciting adventures the last several months. And I've actually been going through many different levels of lower beings who believe they're Jesus Christ, who center people around the world, meaning people who pray to Jesus may not be receiving Jesus Christ in the highest. So there are many different spirits that took on like a part of his essence, so to say, and believed so much that they were Jesus that they go to these people when they pray for him, and they give the people that their energy. So it's very interesting because I went through many of them and then came to Jesus's actual copy, and through this experience, I discovered that Jesus wasn't really Jesus at all, and he didn't resonate with his abilities nor his beliefs or his foundations in what Jesus Christ in the highest truly is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so during this process, there were many beings from different levels of heavens. Well, they call them heavens. However, since I've been going through these different heavens, I've realized that they're not even so much as pleasure realm heavens, but they're more of an astral plane that believes they are heavens. They're higher than the astral plane, and there are many spirits and ghosts that live in the astral plane that are kind of carousing around the planet doing different things. But these people actually have built different realms for themselves, up to 9 realms, where they have different areas in the realms where they actually, what they call center people. So they'll go to people whom do things in patterns on a daily basis, such as basic things like brushing their hair, brushing their teeth, or the way they eat, and they'll center that this is the way they do it all the time. So they'll focus their energies on being that person and centering them in a particular realm that they have, for instance, the 7th heaven. And what happens is the 7th heaven was being centered by Jesus's copy. However, Jesus's copy wasn't really created by Jesus. It was created by the copy's father. And the copy's father pretended as if he was God in the highest. So when people actually would die and pass on, he would trap a lot of them in his realms up to the nine heavens, and say that, he understands who they are, and this is the heavens, and this is where you can stay now. And so a lot of people don't receive the true light of God in the highest and Jesus Christ in the highest, because they really believed that this was Jesus Christ himself, this copy, and this was God himself. And
wow, that's like the wrong frequency band almost. And what you're describing to me almost sounds like an artificial intelligence or an imposter program.
It's really amazing and astonishing, but it's incredible to understand that the simplicity of it is how often people around the world aren't really getting the true God and the true Jesus Christ. They don't really know who they are. And so, so it's my mission. It was my mission to disable the realms and to have the different realms had their doors closed from each other. And so I opened the doors so that they could communicate more closely with each other at the different levels and realize the truth of many undertakings that I've shared with them through God in the highest.
Wow, that's powerful. Very, very powerful. And if I recall, you were actually under attack for about a year ago, weren't you? Or you were dealing with some really hard issues.
Yes, definitely. And at that time, I was also dealing with the astral plane, where there were a lot of different ghosts that were parading different Jesus Christs at that time. And so I was talking to them about what to do with getting higher to higher dimensions and receiving more light. But since then, my father being God in the highest, guided me through these realms and guided me with also the astral plane ghosts, who I like to call spirits, because they're more playful and they really are not out to harm people. However, the copy of Jesus Christ that has the Father who was pretending to be God in the highest, he would corrupt the astral plane from time to time, telling them certain ideas about how they should be interacting with the humans. And I've had many conversations with him over this, and have tried through Jesus Christ and God in the highest for him to clean up his act, so to speak, and to really understand that thousands of years of him doing the same thing isn't working anymore. And we're just going around in circles with the way that he's been centering these lower realms of heavens that aren't really heavens at all. And communicating with the ghosts as to what to do and how to interact with humans, because they more like make disturbances. The ones from the astral plane. So I've shared with them the light of God in the highest is to really receive the light of nature and go to the trees and go to the rainbows and go to the mountains and really heal from Mother Nature firstly, and then receive the light of God in the highest to ascend past these lower realms that call themselves the pleasure heavens and really go into the light to have a new life. Because there's too many spirits and ghosts that are around the planet and really bringing down the energy and not allowing the true light of God in the highest and Jesus Christ in the highest to shine through.
Well, that's very true. It is containment almost to some degree. So the solution would be you're in communication with these beings and actually directing them, or in the process of trying to direct them to transcend.
Yes, exactly. Well, at first I wasn't sure what kind of body they would have. However, I realize now that they really just are spirits, and a lot of them do not center people around the world, but the ones who do were the ones that I was most concerned about, because they have a lot of beauty with them, as far as they can recognize sweetness and warmth and things of the heart. But the very challenging part of that is that when they actually center people, the spirits put their energy on people that they think are like them in that particular seventh realm heaven, then they are taking the light from that person and dimming that person's light, so that person can't really truly feel who they truly are in their higher self. It's a block.
Right. That makes sense. Very, very interesting. Yeah, and it seems to me like a lot of people are in that phase, insofar as not really embracing that pure aspect of who they really are here on this world.
Well, it is because of a lot of chaotic energies and not really tuning into who they truly are.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And
right.
So I'm trying to have the airways cleared, and to have a cooperation is very challenging, however, because they want to stay in their old ways, and they do want to be a part of the new earth. However, they want it their way, and their way is not even proposed as an actual understanding of what's in light for everyone, more of what's in light of their ego.
Right. That makes sense. Your energy is very pure, very clear, very, very clear, both of you, but yours is very high. I can already tell. Yeah, so it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, do you do a lot of healing work, or do you assist people in this world? I mean, insofar as regular people, besides working spirits?
I don't do any healing work. However, I did do for some time one-on-one conversations with people and sessions to help them find their true soulmate in life, and to attract it energetically before they would actually connect to that. And that's interesting you mentioned that, because that's one of the main gifts that my father, being God in the highest, wanted to give to this realm, is the gift of understanding the true feminine aspect of women, and how that connects to being married within Jesus Christ and God in the highest. And really, truly, the gift that was given to them was to understand that when you have a marriage that's in God in the highest, it's to join together both the man and the woman in the center of their home being, their most deepest heartfelt understandings. And that center was signified by the recognition of the bow, and having the bow of the ribbon of the inside on one end, and the ribbon of the outside on the other end of the bow. So representing the man and woman in a center.
Oh, wow. That's very pretty. That makes a lot of sense right there. Yeah. You definitely have a lot of gifts. There's no doubt about that one. You remind me of a grail keeper, as I would say, or Lady of the Lake, as it reminds me of. But that's that frequency you're emanating. So very fascinating. Wow. Both of you are so brilliant. And it's so nice to see you together as a couple, because you're very much a complement to each other.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, I love doing work with David. We haven't done it much recently, but we're going to be continuing writing books together.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear that for sure. Well, I'm fascinated too about those star octaves. I think that's very, very interesting. So I'd love to see you both do workshops or something. I hope that you're going to be doing that. I'm not sure if you're even interested, but.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Yeah, I could see that going on for sure. And you say, have you written books before or no?
Oh, yes. We wrote Mona Lisa's Little Secret together, which was a prelude to the DVD we made. And then we wrote God's Great Pyramid.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a great one. Excellent work.
Did you read that yourself?
Yeah, I did. I did read that one a long time ago. Very, very nice.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and there's so much data. The thing is with your work and with David's too, is it's like there's so much information in there. My goodness, you have to highlight it and then go back. Yeah, and even tonight, I mean, my goodness, it was like fast forward, but so much really empowering information. And in a world today where everything seems so chaotic, I think we need to reset on a higher spiritual level. And this is exactly the wave it seems to be, that this seems appropriate. Switching gears and changing things.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, it's wonderful to talk with you. I'm glad you're on board tonight. It's really nice to have you both together. So that's good.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you really quickly now, David has talked to me a little bit about some of the directed energy weapons and the possibility of being hit with any type of technology. And I know there was a video of you where he was actually showing a scan. Were you hit with, is that your natural energy field, or were you actually getting bombarded with a transmission of some kind from something else?
Oh, was it actually testing my ears?
Yes, yes.
No, that was just natural.
Okay, all right, because I was under the impression that might have been something directed versus natural energetic, natural frequencies.
David was concerned that it could have been definitely something that was focused on from, means of someone focusing an intention. However, I'm not convinced of that myself, because I believe that it could just be a very high frequency ability that just came to my hearing, because I do hear.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Well, and I can only go by my own personal experience. I've had synthetic telepathy is valid technology, and they do use it, but usually that's for hijacking natural clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient people. So it would enhance an interface with artificial intelligence. I'm not saying you were interfered with that, but I have been interfaced with it in 2004, so I know exactly what it is. So, and they do go after very powerful beings who have their light bodies switched on. Just a heads up. So yeah, it's kind of interesting, and I remember him talking about being in Boulder and measuring some of the transmissions in Boulder. So yeah,
I see.
a little bit. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. So just navigating on the higher transmissions is much better, though, for sure.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Steering away from the other stuff. There's no doubt about that. Was there anything you wanted to let our listeners know about tonight? Anything you want to touch on?
Well, I think it's important for people who do pray and meditate to be very aware of their energy and to be aligned with, when they do pray, using the word the highest, God in the highest, really makes a big difference, because I went through several gods who said they were the highest, and they certainly were not. Mm-hmm. And also when they pray to Jesus Christ, to focus it very deeply within their center, and even mentioning Jesus Christ in the highest helps a great deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
That makes sense. For sure. Yeah. No imposters, no tricksters. And of course, there's a lot of that going on too, for certain. So what is, what is your impression of, it's interesting. He was talking about the light body in Merkaba, and I'm very, very familiar with that. Now, when you talk about Christ, or when he was talking about Christ, to me, it's the transfiguration of the atom, insofar as rearranging our molecular structure and our DNA to such a level, we're vibrating at such a high frequency, we're able to achieve avatar consciousness. Is that what you all are relaying tonight? Is that what you're, does that resonate with you in what I'm saying, or no?
Yes, you'd have to tell me more about it, because I didn't actually hear my husband.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, he was discussing a little bit about some of the some light body, and talking about the energetic associated with the Christ and also the hologram. And to me, when we talk about light body, it seems to me like that is the ability, when fully activated into Merkaba, which actually is able to navigate and actually do the phase shifting and the bilocation as a true ascended master consciousness and avatar. And I think that's pretty much what we were here on this world in the illusion of actually achieving, and to some degree, I think that's what the goal is.
Okay, yes, that all makes sense to me. What I can speak on is what I've been understanding through going through the realms that I have been going through, is that there's the soul, and then there's your heart and your home, where you center what's in the center of your heart through your home. David and I, having the course Quantum Regenesis, we talked a lot about the focus on the home being your center with your family, and that is a focus that is part of your different forms. So you having the soul, and then your home being focused on from the center of your heart, and then your higher self. The higher self can attain both the light from the soul and the heart, to recognize what is really truly in the depth of your being. But then you have a ka, and your ka doesn't really recognize the depth of your being through your soul and home. Rather, they can recognize things more outwardly, as far as what their location is and where their attention is at any given time. And their call can be enlightened as well, if you move with the speed of God through it, such as saying, I am here now, I am doing this now, I'm reaching, I'm feeling this height of this energy now, and I'm going there now, or I am seeing that this needs to be done right now, so I'm going to it right now. And so you can teach your ka and your spiritual body, being your soul and your heart, to merge together as one, whereas normally they separate and the ka can be left behind in the astral plane, whereas your heart and your soul can move on into the light. Mm-hmm. So it's a very unique and new understanding that I realized that you really can do both. However, it's also in the light to let go of your ka and realize that's not really who you truly are, if it's not aligned with the depth of your soul and heart, and to recognize that you don't need your ka to be attached to you when you do die. Whereas in these realms that I've been going through, they have several kas at different levels of the different realms, and then they have their highest self at the top. Mm-hmm. But they're connected to their lower kas, which is very peculiar to me, I found, because I don't resonate with that, having God in the highest as my father. I believe it's best to just understand what's in love for your highest self.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, it seems to me like, well, the density and the vibration would be due to probably whatever they're thinking about through their own state of consciousness. But I agree with you. I think that different subtle energy fields and levels of the frequencies associated with the body, whether it's the astral body or the emotional, mental, physical, and such, that they need to be in resonance or certainly be ramped up to higher frequency in order to mutate, transcend. That's very, very interesting. All this, I love the data you guys are exploring and actually showing to the mass collective on the timeline. I think it's very important right now. There's no doubt about it. And I'd like to see y'all do initiations. I don't know if you're doing anything like that or if you're even guided to. Have you thought about that?
Doing initiations such as?
Yeah, like spiritual initiations or DNA active initiations at all? Or
no, we haven't actually touched on that quite yet.
Yeah.
No, David has had some profound dreams about doing that, and he's seen himself giving darshan. However, that opening in his meditation hasn't been epiphanized yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that too. Yeah, there's big purpose. There's no doubt about it. Well, we need all the light we can get here on the timeline with all these strange things going on. So I'm certainly appreciative of you guys being here. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and definitely for your show to get these messages out.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's really nice. You know, we get into such dark tides sometimes with all the things that happen here in this world. But, you know, it's interesting with your communication, what's going on with you right now. You have the visuals you see, and you also are in communication. Is that right?
Yes, it's mostly hearing. However, I do get visuals as well.
Okay. And when you sleep at night, do you have like prophetic visions, or is it restful, or how is your sleep?
Well, my sleep has been disturbed by these realms that I'm trying to let go of now. And initially, it hadn't been touched by them at all. But the last couple of months, they have been able to get through to my dreams from time to time. So I'm wishing to get back to my normal dream state, which I definitely do have profound visions from time to time with my Father in heaven and Jesus Christ in the highest as well. Mm-hmm. So, and a lot of it has to do with the new earth and what's in love for creating something that's profoundly needed for the whole civilization.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yeah, we call that Ascension to some degree. Is that the same thing? You guys use the same terminology for what they call Ascension and the timelines and the New Earth Star Association?
I'm not familiar with that particular understanding of the Ascension for the New Earth.
Yeah, it's more about just people, DNA activation, light body Merkaba, and literally changing our states of consciousness on such a high level that the entire world shifts. And it's going to take a lot more than what people realize, but I do believe that can be established through states of consciousness and frequency, as we were talking about.
Yes,
yeah, I'm just curious. I think that's the goal is literally to deprogram, or at least have a lot of people deprogram from where they've been socially engineered, and then shift the collective up to a higher overtone, so they're able to see better, with more clarity. But that's the objective, I would say, if we were to get this thing rolling full speed ahead. But yeah, well, it's wonderful to
Yes.
talk to you. I tell you, it's great to have you join us. It's very it's nice honor to have you jump in and say hello. I don't know
Thank
if David
you.
wants to say anything or not. We have about maybe 7 minutes plus or minus. I'm trying to look over here. So if he wants to hop back on, or if you want to finish the show, it's fine by me. Whatever y'all want to decide on doing.
Okay, sure. Let me just focus for a minute.
I hear doors. Stand by.
Solaris.
Yes.
Okay, Solaris, here's David again. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. It's wonderful, Crystal, to talk to you. Take care.
Yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I was just meditating. I know there's a few minutes left, and I realized we didn't talk about the frequency targeting.
Right.
And, right, that we talked about off the air. And so I want to mention that I looked at the idea that our family was being hit by microwaves, and that could have contributed to some of what happened, and some of the messages that my wife was getting were literally being transmitted. And there were documents released recently, and RT News ran the story, Sputnik ran the story, and that this government worker, I think it was in Washington State, received these documents by accident that proved that the government could do mind control on people. And they could do it from telephone poles, through the internet, through your cell phone, and through microwave towers, etc. So I got myself a really good microwave meter from trifield.com. And we were in Boulder, Colorado, because I was doing a taping of George Noory's show for the Gaia TV channel. And we were staying at the Hotel Boulderado. Excuse me, and I'm always checking, background radiation to see what's going on. And these meters, you can put them in alarm mode. And before we left Sedona, Arizona, one night I put my meter on and put it in alarm mode, and it just went off in the middle of the night. And that proved to me that our house was getting targeted, and that could have been because of my, many, many media appearances that the government wanted to hit our family with microwaves and see what happened to our brains. And so we left Sedona because of that and moved to British Columbia, where, I haven't lived for a long time, to raise our daughter, Alira, and have a new baby girl. So we're at the Hotel Boulderado, and my meter is going crazy. It's going to the end, and then the needle, it's an analog meter, not a digital meter, is spiking to the maximum. And so I walk around the hotel, and I can't see it anywhere else in the hotel except my room, our room, where my two children, my wife is sleeping. And we had driven all the way down from Canada for this interview, and we were there for 6 days. So you can imagine what those kind of levels could be doing to the human nervous system. And so I got on the phone, called the hotel manager. He brought the electrician guy up, and I showed him my meter. I said, "This is unacceptable. You can't have these kind of levels in the human nervous system." And they took me really seriously. He walked around the hotel with the meter. It wasn't happening anywhere else. It was just my room. And then I went outside and I put this on YouTube. I have this on YouTube. And I went walking around the town of Boulder, and I could see the needle was active at the bottom levels in measuring watts per meter squared in microwaves, which is just internet and cell phone tower activity. But then when I walked over, I went to City Hall in Boulder, just nothing inside of City Hall. I went over to where the microwave towers were, and not much activity coming off of those at a low angle, which means a steep angle. And then I got near the Shambhala Meditation Center, and the needle went through the roof. And it was consistent, and I've got that on video. So I thought, no, I checked and double-checked Shambhala. It was worse than my hotel room. So it looked like I had proof that Shambhala Meditation Center and my hotel room were being hit by severe microwave activity.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Wow.
it's really intense. I mean, that
Mhm.
means they're able to target people. And rather than if I was walking around the town and the whole town was the same level as my hotel room, that wasn't the case. The case was my hotel room was a hotspot, and then the Shambhala Meditation Center was a super hotspot, and you can see that on the video I posted. I can send you a link to that video, and maybe you
Mm-hmm.
can share it with
Yeah, I can
people,
put it in the
and
chat. Yeah,
you can put it in
absolutely.
the chat. So then, all of a sudden, Trifield.com came out with this new super sensitive meter, and it's much more sensitive than the first meter they had out for years. And this new one, right now we're living in a basement suite in our town, and so because of the concrete walls, I'm not picking up any internet in the background. So this super sensitive meter, I have it right here, measures in a much finer resolution of watts per meter square. It's not written on the meter itself, it's in the brochure than my other
Mm-hmm.
one. And I hold it to my wife's head, and she's got microwaves coming out of her brain.
Mm.
I take
That's
it away
interesting.
from her head, it goes back to zero. So my background is zero. I have no activity in this basement suite in my background in the kitchen. So I put it back to her head, goes back up.
Mm-hmm.
Take it away from her head, nothing. Put it back to her head. And I did this for 3 or 4 nights. I really wanted to be sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I posted it on Facebook, and people responded and said it might be a dental filling. She had one more gold filling. It cost $1,200 to take that out and put a
Mm.
porcelain one in, and that wasn't it. Microwaves are still there. So is there an implant? Possibly. Is there off-planet technology involved here? There are beings in the God, the lower. See, the way the universe is divided spiritually, you have the physical suffering, planets like Earth, where we experience pleasure and pain, duality, good and evil. Good and evil is subjective, so everybody argues about, who's right and who's wrong. And that's why it's a poison. So, and then you have the realms of the pleasure realms that the Buddhists and the Hindus confirm, which are planets of sexuality, amazing food, and God, goddess pleasure realms where people live for, in the 30,000 year range. I was in India with the Dalai Lama in 1996, and he was telling the disciples, if a god or goddess ever appears to you, here's the instructions, what you do, don't worship them as God, you can be friends with them, but they appear much more advanced than us, but they're not,
Mm-hmm.
they're not on the same path that you're on. It's amazing that Dalai Lama was telling his disciples this in this massive teaching in Dharamsala, India, and as if they were going to run into them possibly, right? Because when you do heavy duty meditation, you become very powerful, and you can have meetings with all sorts of different beings. And so then above those heavens, and there are 7 to 9 bands of the pleasure heavens there, and planets and flying saucers associated with those planets. There are the planets of the super enlightened that go from the first level of those heavens to the second, to the third, all the way to the ninth, and that's very well documented across religiously. Even in the Gnostic Gospels, there is a scripture called Treatise on the Eighth and the Ninth, which is all about the eighth and the ninth levels of heaven. And Muhammad claimed that the seventh was the highest heaven, but it isn't. They go even higher. So the Buddhists have records of the eighth and the ninth as well in Lankavatara Buddha Sutras. So the point is these different realms exist, and my wife seems to be getting a lot of messages from the pleasure-based heavens, and it's really detailed stuff. I mean, it really shows energetically. You see, our planet is failing because the next band beyond our planet, let's say that we go to the first level of clear light, enlightened heaven beyond Earth, and that we still are able to communicate with those departed loved ones.
And
they are still influencing us. So they're not doing a very good job. I know we got to go.
Yeah, we do. And I want to thank both of you so much for being on, David. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to have you back very soon. Thank you so much.
There's a lot more.
Yes, there is. And thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. Stay tuned for Shiny Side Out with David Dunjo and Becky coming up next to sell you on tonight from Down Under with their fantastic show, as they always do. I believe they'll be finishing up with Utopian Lands. So stay tuned, everybody. Once again, thank you again, David. It's an honor to have you on tonight. Thank you, Crystal. Night, everybody.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Revolution Radio.
You don't see it, do you? How close we are to absolute chaos? The sick ones are sitting on their fat masses, eating and drink themselves into a stupor, polluting the world without a second thought while it goes down the toilet. Nobody wants to do the nasty work. You know, the shit that we all just think about. Most good citizens are just along for the ride and then bitch and moan and complain about everything when it doesn't work out. Not me. Get it done.
Revolution Radio, where we do the nasty work. www.freedomslips.com.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio! The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates.